Okay, a hat for Ivan. Oh, what's this about? It's presented to no one because this book was a gift. So it's presented to you right now. This is a book by Max Lucado. Illustrations by David Wenzel. Thank you, David. Thank you, Max. And it is dedicated for Art Miller. Thanks for helping me and millions of others wear the hat the Father intended. Oh my, this is a religious book. Lord have mercy. All right, well, hey, you know what? I think he's talking about, wearing, the authentic you, whatever role it is that you're playing for others. I think that you should play that role and play it to the best of your ability. All right, here we go. There's our boy. It says, Ivan was a happy boy. He lived in the town of Hat Ville, a place where everyone wore hats. Not just any hats. The doctors wore hats, but they were doctor hats. The cooks wore hats, but they were cooking hats. The farmers wore farming hats. Everyone wore hats. And Ivan's father was the hat maker, a very good hat maker. Ivan loved to watch him work. People would come into his shop to order a hat, and Ivan's father would ask, "What do you really love to do?" "Oh, I love to fish," one man said. "Do you fish well?" "That I do," he said. "Then you need a fishing hat." And so Ivan's father would make it, complete with a pocket for the hooks and a small bucket for the bait. He made everyone a hat, and since everyone wore a hat, everyone knew what everyone else loved to do, and did well. Want some flowers? Talk to the lady with the roses on her head. Need directions? Ask the man with a hat made from a map. Wondering how to fix a fence? Look for the fellow who wears a hat shaped like a hammer. Everyone wore hats, and Ivan's dad made hats. Could anything be better than that? One thing could, getting your own hat. And Ivan was about to receive his. At the age of 10, each boy and girl celebrated Hat Day. Ivan was 9, going on 10. He could hardly wait to get his hat. What will mine look like, he thought. Would it be made of felt like the clerk's, bright blue like the policeman's, covered with cloth like the dressmaker's? He didn't know, but he would find out soon. All Ivan could think about was his new hat. All he could talk about was his new hat. He told everyone. He saw, "My hat day is coming." The people in Hat Ville were excited for Ivan. Some people had their own ideas about what kind of hat he should wear. Felix the baker did. Ivan passed Felix's bakery every morning on the way to school. And every morning Ivan stopped in the doorway and smelled the baking bread. He couldn't always see Felix. Felix was short and round, like the cookies that he baked. But he could always see Felix's bobbing hat. It was tall and white, like the wedding cakes that he made. One day when Ivan stopped by for a sniff, Felix was waiting for him. "I hear you're about to get your hat," he smiled at the young boy. "I am," Ivan replied with pride. "Well, I have a surprise for you. Come in." And with that, the baker stepped back into the shop and Ivan followed. What could the surprise be? A donut? Some cookie dough? No. Felix didn't give Ivan something to eat. He gave him something to wear. "I have a hat for you," announced the baker. Ivan was surprised, not disappointed and not happy, just surprised. He thought his hat would come from his father, the hat maker. But then again, maybe he was wrong. Besides, Ivan didn't want to hurt his friend's feelings. Thank you, Mr. Felix, Ivan said, taking the hat. Go ahead, put it on. And so Ivan did, but it was too big. It fell not just over his eyes, but over his whole face. That's okay, little friend. It'll soon fit. Just wear it anyway. Ivan didn't know what to say except thanks. So he said thank you again, and he turned to walk out the door. But when he did, he ran into the wall. Here, I'll help you, offered Felix, guiding his friend to the door. You look great, just like me. Ivan started to say thanks again, but he tripped on the step and he fell flat on his back. Funny, he said to himself. I thought my hat would fit better than this. Since he walked the same path to school every morning, Ivan was able to feel his way down the street. Soon the scent of daisies and roses told him that he was nearing the flower shop. When he heard the hammers pounding, he knew he was near the carpenter's shop also, and the sound of the music told him he was passing by Miss Anita's piano studio. Miss Anita loved music, and Miss Anita loved Ivan. Ivan's father had made his special music hat. Wait, that's her special music hat, and look at the hat. It's gorgeous. I absolutely love it. Oh, I'm sorry, it's hard to be a book reader and also look at the pictures. All right, so here we are. All right, he's gone ahead and he's run into Miss Anita, and she loves her music hat. All right, it has strings dangling from the brim, and it's wide and round with tiny guitars on top and piano strings. Since each string had a bell on the end, everyone knew when Miss Anita was near. It was a different sort of hat, but it was perfect for her. No one else would want to wear it, but Miss Anita wouldn't be without it. She loved the hat, and she loved Ivan, and she loved it when he stopped by to hear her play. Of course, on this day, she didn't recognize him. All she saw was a tall hat on a small boy. "Who are you?" she asked. From within the hat came a muffled voice. "It's me, Miss Anita, it's Ivan." He heard her quick steps on the wooden floor. "That's not the hat for you," she declared as she yanked it off his head. "It's not," he replied. "Well, of course not. There's only one hat for you." Suddenly, Miss Anita disappeared into her studio and came out with a very different-looking hat. "I made this just for you. I've been working on it for days. Here, try it on." Ivan was surprised. Not happy, not disappointed, just surprised. He'd never seen a hat like this one. Funny, Ivan said to himself. Miss Anita is a good musician, but she's not a good hat maker. A piccolo dangled from the side, and sheet music was glued to the top. Bells and whistles hung in front of Ivan's face, and a drumstick dangled like a ponytail on his back. "It looks perfect," Miss Anita declared. "This hat was made for you." Ivan smiled. The music teacher turned and walked back into the studio, pleased with herself. Now Ivan had two hats, one in his hand and one on his head. He didn't like wearing either one, but he did not want to hurt anyone's feelings. He didn't know what else to do except keep walking to school. But the hat maker's son was barely down the street when he met a new problem. Oh, something new and interesting. I don't know if you'd call it a problem. Let's see. What are they calling a problem for the young man? Let's see. Oh, okay, hold on. This seems so thick. Did I get it? All right, that's what I mean. Here you go. Now, there we are. Ah, Ivan, the voice was deep and big and belonged to Bruno, the firefighter. "What is that on your head?" Miss Anita gave it to me. "As a joke?" "No, for real." "It's a good thing I came along. I knew your hat day was near, so I brought you a gift." For the third time that day, a hat was placed on Ivan's head. This hat was just like Bruno's, long and red and very shiny. A piece of wire and fire hose was wrapped around it, and a miniature ladder stood straight on top. The big fireman held the hat steady while Ivan tightened the strap beneath his chin. "All right, now that is what I call a hat," Bruno boomed in his deep voice. Ivan stepped back, and when he did, he fell over. The hat was so tall and heavy that the boy couldn't keep his balance. Bruno helped him up and stepped back, and Ivan fell again. "You'll never get used to it." I did, and with that he turned to leave. Ivan tried and tried to stand, but he couldn't, and he kept falling backwards. He stepped back as far as he could until his back was against the wall. "Ah, now maybe you will get used to it," Bruno told him. I got used to mine." "Thanks, Mr. Bruno." Although he didn't feel thankful. Funny, Ivan thought to himself, it's easy for Bruno to wear this big hat, but it's really hard for me. What he did feel was confused. When he had left the house, he had no hats. Now he had 3, and he didn't like any of them. With one, he couldn't see. With the other, he couldn't stand. And with the third one, he didn't want to be seen. What was he going to do? He did not know what to do except to go on to school. So with one hand holding the heavy hat on his head and one holding the others, he carefully walked the rest of the way. Whoa. Things didn't get any better at school. In fact, they got worse. His hats interrupted the class. If he wore the baker's hat, everyone couldn't see, and they chuckled. If he wore the musical hat, he made too much noise. He tried to keep Bruno's hat on his head, but it kept falling off his chair. "Ivan," the teacher finally decided, "maybe you better go home." Ivan was sad, but he knew that she was right. He still didn't know what to do. He had too many hats. And on the way home, he was given many more. The farmer gave him a straw hat with a bandana to keep the sun off. The beekeeper gave him a netted one to keep the bees out. The woodsman gave him a wool cap to keep his ears warm. A clown gave him a cone hat with many colours, and the bookshop owner gave him a hat that's shaped like a dictionary. Ivan soon had many hats. He could hardly carry them all. He would drop one, and then he bent over to pick it up. He would drop another, and finally he had them balanced, when all of a sudden he saw Felix the baker. "Oh no," he thought, "I'm wearing the farmer's hat." So he dropped them all and just barely got the baker's hat on his head and over his ears and his eyes. When Felix saw him, all right, don't know where I was. I think I'm going to reread this particular page, okay? Because someone needed me, and so I had to stop for a moment. All right, so we were here, right here, and let's see, it says, Ivan soon had so many hats that he could barely carry them all. He would drop one, and then he bent over to pick it up, and he would drop another, and he finally had them balanced, when all of a sudden he saw Felix the baker. Oh, I remember this part now. And he said, "Oh no, I'm wearing the farmer's hat." So he dropped them all, and just barely got the baker's hat on his head and over his eyes when Felix saw him. "Looks great, Ivan," shouted Felix. Ivan shouted, tired, "Thanks." Balancing the hats was hard enough, but now Ivan's eyes were covered as he walked. He couldn't see where he was going. He had stopped to rest when he heard the tinkling of the tiny bells. Oh no, it was Miss Anita. Ivan pulled off the baker hat and threw on the musical hat just in time. "Oh, you look wonderful, Miss Anita," exclaimed as she passed. Ivan had started picking up the rest of the hats when he heard the deep voice of Bruno. "Ivan, is that you?" As quickly as he could, Ivan replaced the musical hat with his firefighter's hat. "It's me," he said, straightening, then falling back and back and back until he landed on his bottom. Bruno didn't see Ivan fall. He was already turning the corner. "Looks terrific, my friend," Bruno called over his shoulder. "Thanks," Ivan mumbled to no one but himself. He was so tired he didn't even try to get up. He just sat there, surrounded by hats. "Looks like you've had quite a day." Ivan couldn't remember when a voice ever sounded so good. "I'm sorry, hold on. Is that just how it goes? 1 minute there and 1 minute at home? Okay, fine." "Father," he shouted, jumping up. "You won't believe what happened today. Everybody gave me a hat, and—" "None of them fit," his father said. "Well, that's right," said the boy. "And they made you tired?" Ivan nodded. "Well, yes. How did you know?" "But you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, right?" Ivan shook his head. "Yes, father, how do you know?" His father put his arm around his son. He said, "That's right." "How did you know?" Okay, well, wait a minute. Okay. Let's read this again, okay? Because I really just don't get that. "Looks like you've had quite a day." Ivan couldn't remember when a voice ever sounded so good. "Father," he shouted, jumping up. "You won't believe what happened today. Everybody gave me a hat and—" "None of them fit," his father said. "That's right," said the boy. "And they made you tired." Ivan nodded. "But you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings." Ivan shook his head. His father put his arm around his son. "That's right." Ivan stopped. "How did you know?" Well, here are some books by the author in case you'd like to patronize him and look into his other works. He's a famous Christian author, actually. I'm familiar with his work. Oh, good, there's another page because I was lost and thinking, oh my goodness, that makes no sense. Thank you, okay. "I'm the hat maker, Ivan. I have seen what happens when people wear hats that they weren't intended to wear. They feel silly, they fall down, and they get tired." Ivan's father got down on his knees and wiped a smudge of dirt off his son's cheek. "Listen, son, just because someone gives you a hat doesn't mean you're supposed to wear it. They mean well, but they don't know you. That's my job. I'm the hat maker, and I'm your father. So you'll make a hat just for me?" "I will. All you have to do is ask." "Oh, please, father," Ivan smiled. "I would like that very much." "Well, let's gather up these hats and go home then." As the hat maker and his child walked toward home, the father asked, "Ivan, tell me, Ivan, what do you really love to do?" Alright, I'm sorry. Okay then, so that's the end of that book, and I hope you liked it, and I hope it made a little sense to you, and if you figure it out, why don't you let me know, because I don't know about that book, but it's been a wonderful time. I'm privileged to be able to read to you. I love you very much, and I hope you have a good evening. Sweet dreams.